So we're talking about spoilers of what potentially will be. Well, now that I'm looking at the rest of the lineup, it's at least going to be top 5 at the box office this year. Okay. I'm putting Avatar ahead of it. I've thought of you seeing the trailer beforehand. I'm putting Top Gun ahead of it. And I'm going to guess that Thor gets past it too, with the Hemsworth and the Portman and the Christian Bale of it all. But with all that said, I'm putting
Black Panther.
Is that this year?
November.
So they just haven't released a trailer for it. Okay, then yes, this will be number 5 at the box office this year. All that being said, for a movie I'm sure you've seen,
Jurassic World.
No, everybody, I'm telling all of you,
dude.
Probably yes, Oz.
Those make so much money.
Oz, I'm being facetious. This is going to be a bit. Everybody, I'm helping you. Don't go see this movie. Just let us see it. We'll tell you how bad it is, and then don't go see this movie. If you want to watch Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern and Sam Neill go fight dinosaurs, go watch Jurassic Park. Don't see Jurassic World. Anyway, all that being said, we're now going to talk spoilers about this movie that so many of you have already seen. So if you haven't, and you made it 39 minutes into this podcast, listening to us talk about it with some restrictions, come back afterwards. Or if you just don't care, enjoy this spoiler conversation. My rebuttal to this being a leap from the character that you see at the end of WandaVision to the character that you now see, what we now have established is 2 years later, which blew my mind that this was, I guess it's a year later, right? Because WandaVision was 2021.
No, because nothing in the MCU fits that way, because Endgame's in 2023.
No. I literally meant when it was released, like in our world.
Then yes, 2021.
Yes. So like I guess it's a year later. Regardless, what has now been some time since she's left Westview, and then I guess banished herself to this little portion of what I'll call Montana. Although if you watch that Paramount Plus show, it's not Montana. Regardless, there's the thing which it's called the Darkhold, and it's the thing that Agatha Harkness introduces, and it's an exploration into dark magic. And there are countless references to the Darkhold, and it's the book that's Wanda's using to explore the multiverse and to find these other worlds where she has kids and she's happy, and to see the world that she could have, and then eventually dreamwalk from universe to through the universe as this other version of Wanda. And it's an exploration into the dark magic, which means the Wanda that we see at the end of WandaVision is still Wanda, but then she becomes the Scarlet Witch and then is affected by the Darkhold. And I know that some of the response to this is like, well, that's not effective enough of a thing to get her to turn into a villain. And I'm just like, if all it took for Doc Ock was like a chip to break, and all of a sudden those arms control him, if all it took was Loki's scepter and Hawkeye is now a bad guy, all of these villains have these evil tools that lead to it. And the countless references to what the Darkhold creates, like Doctor Strange in one universe here, caused the incursion that destroyed 2 universes, so much so that he then has a suicide mission in the world with the Illuminati. In the What If episode where Doctor Strange, it's what if Doctor Strange had also created, I forget what the actual what if is, but the episode about Doctor Strange.
What if he lost his heart instead of his hands? Boom.
Thank you. This is why Oz is the greatest. When he explores that book that he gets all of his powers to create Strange Supreme, that is a Darkhold. That is an exploration into dark magic. And in one effort, he tries to reason with one of the evil things. And then he actually says the line, if they're not going to freely surrender it, I'm going to forcefully take it. That is what the dark magic does to you. So I am able to say that this Wanda gets to that because the last scene we see in WandaVision is her exploring the Darkhold.
My counter to that is everything you just said is true. Yes. Everything you just said is plot sustainable, or at least plot device sustainable. I don't think anyone cares about the plot device.
I get it. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
The counterpoint isn't oh my God, the Darkhold wouldn't do this to Wanda or anything like that. It's what the fuck did we spend 9 episodes seeing her grow through WandaVision for her to immediately regress. And I think there are elements that could explain that, which are not in the text. You could do sort of an addict story or something like that of someone who needs to find the next fix, which I think even aside from the alcoholism, which they don't really do with Tony Stark, they do the addict story of someone who can't help himself, but to try to find like a magical solution to all the world's ills. I'm not sure that they've sold that arc with Wanda. And part of it, pardon me, is that this character is so badly used in Ultron and the other Avengers movies and in Civil War. There's just nothing there until WandaVision, and WandaVision like fixed it. Now everyone loves this character. It's a little bit of a tough beat for me to see this character make growth and then immediately, just because the stinger says so, regress back. And maybe she is weak and easy to tempt and everything else. I'm not sure that they've sold this human character's arc for that. I totally agree, though, that the sort of superhero magic bullshit of it all explains it and justifies it. But I'm not sure that it makes sense from a Scarlet Witch perspective. I'm not sure it makes sense from a Wanda Maximoff one.
So the thing I've seen about the leap that you're talking about, and really just like her motivations, that she's doing all of this so she can go be the mother that she sees she could be in another universe. And look, WandaVision, we've never actually talked about what our personal rankings of the Disney Plus shows are. WandaVision is always going to be my number one, while admitting that some of the conversation around it was misleading, and literally what you were talking about that you don't like. That
Mephisto.
Will Mephisto be in this? And it's like, yeah, that was fun. And that wasn't there. When I realized that any disappointments I have are all generated by me, the actual look at what grief is and how you overcome loss is like a very well done thing in a Marvel property, which I was never expecting. And actually dealing with the consequences, that everybody got to be a hero at the end of Endgame, and she's looking up and it's like, I lost my brother, my home, my love. And like that one scene where she's got the note from Vision and the floor plans to their house, and then she just lets it all out. Sometimes that's what grief looks like. But another thing, and this is where I actually give the movie a lot of credit, another way that grief gets you is when you're dreaming. And when you wake up from that dream and all of a sudden any type of alternate world that you have gone to where the thing that you've been grieving over doesn't exist, and then reality comes back in the moment you wake up, that was featured here. And like grief has setbacks, which is why when you add in the dark arts and the magic of it all, I bought it, is what I'll say. And then you add in that it's apparently like identical to the comic, that it's like the source material is also accurate too. Where I will jump over to your side is it's less about the writing and how flawed it is. And I hate using the word problematic, but like I do hear anybody out that's like, Marvel might have an issue with writing their female characters, because when you look at how they treated Black Widow and the like just throwing her movie after her death, so the stakes in that movie just like don't exist. And then you add in what they've now done to Wanda, and it's like I've gone and sought out the opinions of a lot of the women in my life to make sure I'm not missing a single thing, that I'm not just being like, look, it makes sense in the plot. And I hear you out that like the most powerful woman and her downfall is, I just want to be with my kids. And that shouldn't be villainized the way that it is, whether it's accurate to the source material or not. Is that something that you either feel or at least empathize with as well? I'm setting you up so poorly there. My bad. Of course you empathize.
No. I get what you're asking. And I think that there is an issue here, but it's an issue that comes from the source material, and not because it's accurate, because I don't really think it's all that accurate, because the craziness of what Wanda does at various points and in various plots is both more extreme and more justified because the character is much more clearly, even when she's a hero, much more clearly. There's a gendered issue to this word I'm going to use here. Crazy throughout all of it. But when she does like no more mutants and things like that, and essentially, kills every mutant on Earth just because, it's not. I get why people would say it's similar to the plots. I don't think it is, and I don't think it's justified in the same way. And it doesn't come from a WandaVision-esque story that leads into it. That said, there's absolutely an issue here because there are no fucking female superheroes. And we're at a place where, because they're kind of desperate, it's like Moon Knight spoiler, Scarlet Scarab is now a thing, as though anyone has ever fucking heard of that character. And I think they're doing a good job of like making the Florence Pugh Black Widow seem like a badass, of introducing Kate Bishop. I think that the Sylvie Loki in Loki is pretty great. And I think we're going to see a lot of her in the future. I think it didn't work, but I think Eternals, at least for most people, tried to introduce a lot of interesting female characters to the mix. This is a little bit of the IP downfall because nobody read stuff about female superheroes in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it didn't really bubble up until the 90s, where more women just statistically were reading comic books and we're engaging with these stories more. And you get so many of the embarrassing, like Captain Marvel sex pot sort of plots that are really Miss Marvel sex pot stories that are out there that are just, they're kind of sad to look at in hindsight. They're trying more on the TV side because we're going to get Miss Marvel. We're going to get She-Hulk. They're trying to, fix this a little bit, but it's tough because there just aren't many characters they're going to get people to drop their $18 at the movie theater on, and you try to build them up and you try to justify them, and that's what they're doing with the Marvels. That's why you have your Captain Marvel movie, you have your Miss Marvel TV show. We're going to bring them together and throw in the Rambeau character from WandaVision, and we'll get our whole bunch of Marvels and try to make each of them a little more important in the future. But they're sort of running out of people that we give a shit about, aside from bringing back in stuff that already exists that isn't in the MCU, like Fantastic Four and X-Men and all that. What other characters are left that people actually care about? I'm at Nova, and that I'm kind of tapped out there for people that were like, fuck yeah, I need to see this. Like, we've had a Ghost Rider, so that doesn't fit the bill. So I don't know what the solution is to the gender issue beyond trying to make these characters work slowly but surely. Hopefully Mighty Thor is good and people respond well to Portman. I suspect they won't because the internet is dark and full of awful people. So I assume people are just going to be really mad that how dare a woman be Thor. So
Twitter's a dark hole, Oz.
Yes, it is. So
yes.
I don't know what the solution is here, but I think there is an issue, but it comes both from the source material and the means of production. It's also clear that the MCU itself wasn't as progressive as it is now in a lot of core ways. I mean, you have like Ike Perlmutter refusing to allow Marvel to have Rebecca Hall be the bad guy in Iron Man 3 because nobody will believe that a woman can be the bad guy, which is one of the reasons that movie is such like a grinding mess, because they just shoehorn in Guy Pearce. And there's a whole backstory to all this, like essentially like an internal Marvel Studios civil war that Feige won out against Perlmutter and then started to move things in a more positive direction. But, you had a guy who's actually just like a racist, sexist piece of shit who was a major voice at the table for the first like 7 or 8 years of the MCU. So there's a lot of, kind of building back that needs to happen. And I think Feige wanted to do Black Widow earlier. He wanted to do Captain Marvel earlier, but there was internal structure between Disney and Marvel that made it impossible to do that.
So a couple of things. So I guess for me personally, the leap from WandaVision to this, I don't know, it based off of going, because I had the thought of like, damn, all that work done in WandaVision gets reversed with this, and then going back and seeing the end of WandaVision, I don't think that there's as much closure as I initially thought at the end of WandaVision. I think that was about her getting over Vision, which if there isn't there like a white version of Vision, where is he in all of this? Also in these alternate universes, where is Vision? So she's just like a single mom that didn't conceive with. So all those questions aside, I did think that there was still, and look, this is just how grief works. Like you have setbacks, you know, one day you're like, I'm fine, I have a closure. And then the next day you're not. And that's probably going to look a certain way if you have magic powers that a Darkhold also working their way with you as you go backwards in your process. So I guess for me personally, it worked. I also just flat out agree with you that the source material is the larger issue rather than, because I've seen Michael Waldron getting raked through the coals, and maybe it wasn't correct to have this very complex female storyline with very stereotypical female motivations from the comic that it was written from be written by a dude. One of the things I love so much about The Last Duel, a movie we both love, is that like the two dudes, our Boston bros, wrote the two male perspectives, and then they went and got a woman to write the female perspective. And that's why that movie, I think, works so effectively. And I wonder if that was missing from this. Having said all of that, I think this can now lead into any larger frustrations you have with the reaction to the disappointment to this movie, where and the Illuminati is introduced. And look, I said this when we did our top 10 of the year. I knew this was coming. I didn't know I was going to like pretty much know exactly what was coming outside, holy shit, of John Krasinski from the, I can't even just say from The Office. John Krasinski being Reed Richards was a legitimate holy shit moment. And the fact that I saw Professor X show up and then the theme from the cartoon plays
was amazing, by the way.
It's amazing, but damn if my mind would have been so much more blown if I didn't know he was coming. Like that's where my frustration with the source material was. And Marvel having so much credibility for me that while any person with common sense knew that Toby and Andrew were going to be in No Way Home, the shock of seeing it and hearing it for the first time in the movie elevated that moment so much. So I guess I assumed, oh, if they're giving away Patrick Stewart in the trailer, they're giving like, we're getting Magneto. Like Logan's just going to show up in one scene, or at least they were going to introduce the X-Men in this movie. And that's not what we get. Like they're just their version of the Avengers in Earth 838 or whatever the number is.
The Illuminati's a thing. That's a comic thing.
Right. But that thing is that thing accurate to what we see portrayed in this movie? Actually,
kind of. It's not necessarily the light up, and it's not really a Supreme Court setup like they have in this movie. But in effect, the smartest, greatest heroes of Earth align and behind the scenes manipulate what's going on in the world. So you'll see it. There are different configurations, but you see it with Iron Man and Reed Richards. Namor is a common member, Black Panther, where they'll kind of actually get together and be the Illuminati is the appropriate name here because they're like working the threads throughout the greater Marvel world. So it's not an inaccurate concept, but yeah, I look, I get what you're saying. And they made a choice on the trailers, almost certainly motivated by the buzz around Spider-Man and the leaks around Spider-Man. Because anyone with a fucking social media account knew that Toby and Andrew were in that movie. I mean, every reporter asked poor Andrew Garfield if he was in the fucking movie or not for like 6 months on 2 other movies. So it's just, it's out there. And I think they thought they could get the same perk here. And I think there's really 2 problems to it, which number one, for me, I think the Krasinski reveal was actually kind of cooler because that's like pure service the internet, give us what we want. I thought that was awesome. Yeah. But I think the bigger issue is that those characters don't do anything. And I think the frustration that people have is that we're sold this bill of goods that we're going to get fucking Patrick Stewart in a Doctor Strange movie. And he's in the movie for like 4 minutes and then gets his neck snapped in a dream sequence. Because of the way my brain works, I think it's fucking great. I think it's so funny. I think it's such a good troll to bring back all of these characters and then have them brutally slaughtered by Wanda. I think it's fucking hilarious. I think number one, it establishes her bona fides, especially when she heel turns, for how powerful she can be. Number two, I just think it's so fucking good. I think it's so funny there's some like goofiness. Clearly they weren't all in the same place, which is why they just stand there and watch Reed Richards get ripped to shreds.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something so funny about all these famous people coming in just to get fucking slaughtered. It's very, that's like the most Sam Raimi thing about it, to brutalize these people. And I get that people get really mad. Like people get mad at the Ben Kingsley Mandarin. It's the same sort of thing where we're actively trolling the audience, and I'm into it. I think it's good. Here's the problem. Taking a step back for a moment, let's talk about what they did deliver. They gave us a new version of Captain Marvel inspired by WandaVision. So it makes thematic sense for why it's here. They give us Captain Carter, which is probably the best creation of What If, and a delight because it's always nice to have Haley Atwell. They give us the fucking Inhumans show brought back, which is like the dog baby of the entire Marvel thing over the last 15 years. And they bring back Anson Mount, who that show is very, very bad, but he's not the problem with it. I think that's such a weird, deep cut thing to bring back. I kind of think it's great in concept. They give us Reed fucking Richards. They introduce the Fantastic Four for the first time, and they do it with the dream fan casting that everyone has wanted on the internet. And they give us Patrick fucking Stewart and introduce the X-Men clearly, because there are illusions otherwise, but clearly introduce the X-Men for the first time as something that exists in this broader universe. Not only that, everything about it is designed in the most like fan service masturbatory way. Let's tease the X-Men 97 theme as though that has anything to do, or X-Men 92, whatever you want to call it, as if that has anything to do with what we're watching. And it's delightful. Like they tease the Captain America theme with Captain Carter. Like it is so built out in a fan servicey way. Not just that, then we get a stinger of Charlize Theron showing up in the MCU. Perhaps our greatest female action star shows up in the MCU. And everyone is like, oh, you didn't give us enough. We didn't get Tony Stark as Iron Man or Krasinski as Captain America or any of this other stuff. And guys, we came from an era where like one little allusion to a gamma ray was like, oh my God, it's mind blowing. And now we have this. Like this is pretty cool nerd shit. And everyone is just fucking broken.
Counterpoint, they gave us the Haley Atwell shield on the poster. They gave us Patrick Stewart. If you need someone to like
pick apart a little thing of the poster, you can't see it when you look at the poster. You need someone to like do the thingy from.
No,
like
you literally just look at the poster.
No, it's
there's the shield is right there.
You have to like zoom in and all that other shit.
Deadpool and people saying that Deadpool was in it. You actually had to do a Rorschach. I know. I'm saying the Rorschach test of like, is that Deadpool? If you want to say he is, I guess we'll find out when the movie comes out. Confirmed, he's not in the movie. There is a legit Captain America, or I guess this version of Captain Carter shield on the poster. Like the one of the shards of glass has a shield. There is no other character that has that except the What If Captain Carter. That's not us having to go be detectives here. That is almost blatant. If we go to the theater right now, it will be there. I guess when it happened with Spider-Man, the two Tobys helped further the other Toby's story. So it's why I'm able to appreciate how that was done and not just call it fan service, not just call it a cameo. This is a literal, we're here for one scene. And yes, it helps further Wanda's plot and establish her dominance. But I don't think like John Krasinski hasn't been confirmed as the new Captain America. Patrick Stewart said like he was nervous about coming back for this one scene, but then he heard that it was just a one-off. And then, okay, sure, I'll come be killed off by Wanda Maximoff. But like this was an opportunity to introduce Magneto if you wanted to. And in this universe, we all know what his relationship to Wanda was in the comics. Like that's a way to introduce that way.
But how do you, this is a serious question. How the fuck do you fit that into the movie? It's already over 2 hours. I don't want 3 hours of fucking Doctor Strange. I'm tired of these fucking 3-hour movies that don't deserve to be that length. I like 85-minute movies. That's sweet. Mm-hmm. We get a movie that's like 85 minutes. You cannot possibly, let's assume that everything else in the movie is the same. You cannot possibly take on the burden of introducing Magneto, introducing the relationship, which does not pre-exist in the comics in the comics, it does not pre-exist in the movies, and in fact is directly contradicted by the character's origin in WandaVision in the flashback episode. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely no way to reasonably do that from a storytelling perspective. It's just more wankerous Easter eggs.
So then as a result, I'm not, and this again is where I open the show talking about, is my expectations on me, or is this Marvel with the leak culture that they've given us and the literal movie we just saw with Spider-Man No Way Home, where it was done so effectively? The fact that they're here for one scene and one scene only, I still have no idea what the direction of this is going, which is, is the next question that I have, but I'll hear your quibble out first.
Spider-Man No Way Home.
Okay.
Daredevil. My favorite part, Daredevil, the thing that gave me the greatest joy, because that's my favorite character and I love that movie and everything else, is the dumbest deployment of a character in the history of movies. That is a character with all this weight for viewers like me and viewers like someone who's just seeing a Spider-Man movie and doesn't give a shit about this stuff, has no idea what the fuck is going on or why this like random dude is catching a brick thrown a window. It's cheap, lazy writing, entirely predicated on your pre-existing relationship with this character. He does nothing. He services nothing. And he's presented in this, let's have a big clap because look at the cane on the ground here sort of way. It's no different than the way that Anson Mount is deployed in this one. It's just a question of people like Daredevil and people fucking hate Black Bolt so far or don't care. And I don't look, even the fucking 3 Spider-Mans things, that's played out properly. Those things are treated well, but No Way Home engages in exactly the same sort of cheap pop that this is doing here. And this at least has the sort of integrity to openly acknowledge what they're doing by murdering brutally every single one of these characters.
I didn't enjoy it as much as you did. That I guess is the biggest difference here, is that and this is why I'm trying to avoid being like, I expected more, because that's on me, not the movie. The Daredevil pop, he needed a lawyer. They got a lawyer. And like us seeing the seasons of Daredevil will apply our prior knowledge to that, the same way that like they needed a head of the Illuminati and Charles Xavier rolls out. I know who that is from 11 other X-Men movies, and then the comics and TV shows that are a part of that give the backstory, which is why I don't need the MCU to explore that much. For it to just show up for one scene and then just be part of her literally picking off each of them, it felt like the version that you don't like with Charlie Cox showing up, which is not, for me at least, effective enough in the storytelling here. Which, look, you raise a good question. Then how do you do it? I'm not 100% sure, which is why. Listen, the last question I have here, before I ask about Charlize Theron, the direction of the MCU overall, where I knew where it was going, like the first Iron Man movie comes out, and then we get the stinger, the Avengers Initiative. Okay, this is all pointing to the Avengers. Great. Then at the end of Avengers, the end of phase 1, we get the Thanos tease. And then for the next 2 phases, this is all heading toward Thanos. And now I'm at this point where like the stakes and the larger direction of the MCU, I'm just kind of curious where all this is headed towards, because like, what does Wanda having this this crisis and this introspective therapy that she's had to go to, what does that do to the overall story? What did Strange's character further with this, and towards what? Like, where are we all headed towards with this? Which, like, the multiverse being introduced is cool. And if this is how you're going to get the Fantastic Four, that we have to go to other universes or go to another universe and see the X-Men, well, that's fine. But like, what is it all headed towards? And look, if you do have, like, based off of your knowledge of the comics and you see the direction that it's all headed, like, I'm actually genuinely asking, like, where are we going with the MCU now? Do we actually have a direction that this is all pointed toward?
Here's the problem. You're asking for something that comic books don't deliver. which is to have this sort of cohesive like thing that it's all leading up to time and time again. And we're going to get a thing that it's all leading up to. I have a bet on what it is. I don't know this for certain, but I suspect it's Secret War, because we're getting Secret Invasion, which is a big part of the Secret War story. That's the Nick Fury show that's coming to Disney Plus next year. And a lot of these characters all fit into that, which is this kind of, it's like an annoying series of crossover things that eventually get us to villains versus villains who are all funded. It doesn't matter. So I think there's a story that they're going to, which is a far less satisfying story than the simple virtues of the snap. So there is a plan, I suspect. And it's clear that they just had their little Marvel writers retreat, and all the writers went off into the woods with Kevin Feige and figured out the next 10 years of the movies and the shows and everything else, or so they say. Look, two things are happening here, which is that Marvel is really, really good at improv and really, really good at adjusting, because a lot of the stuff that's good and we like about these movies wasn't actually planned, or were like happy accidents that they leaned into. And they like to present it as, here's this magical cohesive plan where we were like 10 years Endgame. Isn't it great? And that's just not the reality of how these things were made in practice, but they're going to figure it out. The problem is you're not going to get a thing in the future because there's simply too many characters where you're like, oh my God, they've paid off 71 characters that I'm supposed to care about right now in one movie or one mini series or whatever it may be. And I think as a viewer, you need to reacclimate yourself and find the enjoyment in the arcs of individual characters. And I think we will get conclusory acts on a lot of characters because the actors simply aren't going to do these things forever. And now we've introduced the multiverse as a way to bring back characters who are departed or need to be recast or whatever else, pretty easily. But look, you're going to get Doctor Strange as like a hinge point for everything that's going on for the next 10 years or so. And then Benedict Cumberbatch will be done doing these things, and we'll get Clea as our new Doctor Strange, or we'll get fucking Jacob Batalon as the new Doctor Strange, whatever it shakes out as. That's just kind of how it's going to work going forward. And that's how it's worked in comics for 60 or 70 years. And it's not a satisfying answer, but it's like watching a soap opera or pro wrestling or something like that. It's just kind of the way of the world here. And it to the extent it's going to go forever. And I just don't see a universe where Marvel things disappear in the next like 20 years, even if it's just relegated to Disney Plus and for the hardcore like me. It's not going anywhere. So we're just not going to get an ending because it has to keep going. So
to your point about it not being a satisfied answer, I'm going to throw an analogy at you. You're a Yankee fan.
I am.
All the closures that you had after Mariano Rivera have left something to be desired because of how all-time great Mariano was and impeccable his resume. Although when you dig deeper, not greatest closer of all time. I'm saying like,
I know.
Being the asshole Mets fan because I can be now. Like all the closures that have come after pale in comparison, because holy shit, like that was a satisfying career that I got to watch for 20 years. And where I'm empathetic to somebody being disappointed about this movie or unsatisfied by this movie and a little curious about the direction of the MCU is because Endgame happened. And to a lesser extent, the last 40 minutes of No Way Home happened. And as a result, those expectations are what we bring in to every Marvel property, whether it's justified or not. And it's partly because of what the MCU has been good at over time. And I personally felt that way. And listen, on the second and yes, the third watch of this movie, I was able to enjoy the Captain Carter scene for what it was. Like her saying, oh, I could do this all day. It's like, I literally did the Captain America. Oh, I get that reference. Having Reed Richards or Jim from The Office show up for a scene as Reed Richards, as you mentioned, clearly not in the room with anybody else. And then like just makes one reference to like, I got kids too. And then gets done up like string cheese. Was like, really? That's the introduction to Reed Richards. It's just your your bait for Wanda to chew on. Like, I don't know. I understand someone being frustrated.
Spoilers
by
that Krasinski is not playing that character.
Oh, I know. That's even better. Like, that is the part of this where it's like, if Feige was just like, listen, stop casting my movie, Twitter. You know, like I get that. And look, thematically for Wanda, it does help further her story. I just also understand people be disappointed.
Let me take your analogy a slightly different way. And I'm going to stick to your Yankee fan thing and say that the phase 1 through phase 3 is like being a Yankee fan in, I don't know, 1994. And it culminates in 96, 98, 99, and 2000. You get championships every single year. Mm-hmm. And you sit back and you ask yourself as a Yankee fan, why do I keep watching this shit? Well, number one, they win 90 games every year or something like that. Number two, you find the individual things that are worth glomming onto. It's, especially now that he's vaccinated, lovely to see how well Aaron Judge is playing. It's lovely to see Anthony Rizzo abusing the short porch in right field. Nestor Cortez is the most fun player in baseball, as far as I'm concerned. You find the things that are good to watch and you grab hold of them. And I recognize that I'm not going to get a total fun, good, satisfying Yankee team every year. It's just not going to happen. But I come back and keep watching because there are things that give me joy. It's much the same thing here. I don't expect I'm ever going to get, especially the way baseball is growing and the playoffs have expanded and everything else, that I'm ever going to get 4 titles in 5 years again. I think that I could certainly get someone who goes on like 3 straight MVP seasons. And maybe that's the joy that I get from the future hypothetical Daredevil show or Moon Knight's 2nd season or whatever it may be. You find the things that really click for you and make it worth the engagement.
And this is where I'll remind you, and this is a compliment, I promise, that you're not every Yankee fan. There are very many Yankee fans that have unrealistic expectations for the team. And there are very many Marvel moviegoers that don't have realistic expectations. Now, again, whether that's how we open this pod, I am trying to make sure that it's not my expectations for why I consider the movie flawed, bad, disappointing. Like, I actually think upon a couple watches, like, this movie's fine. Like, it's not whack. It's not bad. It's fine. The next big thing that I thought it was going to be, that I gotta be honest, that they marketed it as being, it wasn't. But it doesn't have to be, which is, again, now going forward where we have to manage our expectations, you know?
I think the thing that's going to work to Marvel's benefit is the sort of recalibration that this movie is forcing upon them, where, look, spoilers for Miss Marvel, it's not a Thanos story. Like, it's not going to be a life-altering, everything has changed, the MCU is different forever sort of thing. Same with She-Hulk. We already know that Thor Ragnarok is going to be insular to the Thor and Guardians universes and will be very important to them, but not have anything else to do with the broader MCU. We're kind of setting, like, Black Panther 2, to the extent that it ends up as a competent movie, is going to be largely about how they can Furious 7 the ending and say goodbye to Boseman more than anything else in the entire movie. And otherwise it's just, Wakanda versus Namor. So, I almost think it's good that we have this set thing happening to us. And the next couple of movies after that are the new Captain Marvel, the new Guardians, the new Ant-Man. We're kind of stuck in this realm of smaller stories, which is going to give us a while for them to move into another big bopper, No Way Home, Endgame sort of thing, which brings all these disparate elements together. And I think we'll get the fun and the joy of seeing what they do with Fantastic Four. We'll get the fun and the joy of seeing what they do with the mutants. That will, sort of perk people up again. I think it's for the best, though, that we don't think about having an brought together big MCU thing for like another 5 years. Like, that'd be great. If 2027, we're looking at like Avengers 5, sweet. That's where it should be. And let's just take the simple joys of doing like Young Avengers or Thunderbolts and bringing together a bunch of characters we like and doing like little mini Avengers stories that way in the short term. And then we can do fucking Galactus or something like that 6 years from now.
I guess we'll see what their plan is. I do hope we get some indication of where that plan is headed sometime soon. Obviously, Comic-Con and D23 are options, but go ahead.
No, there's clearly little splinter universes. There's like the magic and multiverse universe where this exists. There's like the street level universe where even like Shang-Chi exists, but like Hawkeye and Moon Knight and things like that reside. There's the space stuff with Captain Marvel and Guardians. Like there are sort of segregated areas of the MCU. And I think that works because that's often what works in comic book storytelling. If you read comics, you don't read comics to be like, I'm going to get an ending this year. You read comics because you're like, I'm enjoying this writer's run on Captain America or this writer's run on Hawkeye or whatever it may be. And that's the joy you get from it. So I just think we need to start thinking in those terms and less in terms of, getting an ending that we're all satisfied with someday.
Which Marvel's given us in the past is my point. Like the expectations, as you meant, have had to be recalibrated, like you said.
Kind of. They gave you an Iron Man ending and they gave you a Captain America ending, and then they gave you a lot of open-ended shit for a lot of the characters.
I'm not saying like a conclusion to a person's story. I'm saying, again, the Iron Man 1 post credit of like, this is headed toward
Yes,
that's what I'm saying as far as an ending. An end point is more what for lack of a better word, an end game. Okay, that we're all headed toward. Are you aware who Clea is? The character that okay, so Clea in some of the comics, she is Doctor Strange's wife.
Yep.
In some of the comics, she is the ruler of the dark dimension. Also, so I'm just going to assume that the Darkhold is like long COVID, because when Doctor Strange fools around with the Darkhold in the final act, and we get Zombie Strange for what I thought was a very cool and potentially frightening set piece for people. You see him have the Darkhold exacts its whole, as the sinister Strange that we see in that dimension says, and yet the Scarlet Witch destroying the Darkhold in every universe. You'd assume that the Darkhold, then the effects don't happen, but again, long COVID, so Third Eye pops up as the last shot of the movie, and then in the mid credits, Clea shows up, the alleged ruler of the dark dimension, and asks Stephen Strange to go with her. Where is that storyline, you think? Is this going to be the potential significant other that there's heat with going forward?
I mean, look, I'll be honest, Doctor Strange is not my favorite comic book character. The magic stuff is unlike my son, less for me. That said, this is a character who has all sorts of ties to Dormammu, who was the villain in the first one. I'll say I'm a little bummed that they didn't pay off Mordo here. Baron Mordo is a good character, and I love Chiwetel Ejiofor, and they just do the sort of multiverse thing. And like a throwaway line that he's trying to destroy me or something like that. And I just thought that was really weird. And I know I genuinely, I like when these movies have a history that's happening off screen. Like it's clear that relationships are moving forward. It's clear that people are doing things when we're not watching. But I think it's kind of a bummer that I don't know if we're skipping over that or if we're coming back to it in 3, but I would like to see Ejiofor get a better role. And hopefully we can get a sort of Clea, Doctor Strange, Ejiofor story in Strange 3.
Did you see the report about the scene that was cut that had, I guess, Earth 616's Mordo being killed by Wanda in the little field of the dimension that she's banished herself to?
I did not, but I'm overjoyed that I did not see that.
Yeah, because that was apparently the opening of the movie, that existed, and that then gave us the indication that Scarlet Witch has turned, and that also concludes the Mordo story. Because again, the last thing we see from Mordo in the first Doctor Strange is like no more sorcerers. And then the next thing we see of him is in the alternate dimension, and just a throwaway line from Strange that he hunted me all these years,
I'm very glad to have not heard that, because that would be a fucking bummer if they dispense with Ejiofor that way.
Yeah. Although, because of the multiverse, which again adds to my curiosity about stakes, is there an end to Ejiofor?
There aren't stakes. I mean, that's the problem. It's every soap opera, it's every pro wrestling, it's every comic book. There are no stakes because no one's ever truly dead. No one's ever truly gone. I mean, fucking take Loki. We both like Loki. We think Waldron does a good job on Loki, even if we have some quibbles with how he writes in exposition dumps in this movie. we now love this character who is technically not the same character that we were sad when he dies in Infinity War. Like, it's just, we're just calibrated to this. And I think we just respond to seeing, hey, there's Loki on the screen a little more than we respond to the emotion of, wow, look at Loki's growth. And now they've just kind of end run around to turn Disney Plus Loki into Infinity War Loki with a slightly different reason why he becomes more heroic. So I does it matter if they kill off 616 Mordo? I guess not, because they can bring back 838 Mordo or, 69 Mordo. It doesn't really matter. They could do whatever they want here. But I think that Ejiofor is good, and I kind of like sticking to the 616 story as the thing that matters, and everything else being like a fun distraction.
I was hoping for 420 Mordo personally, but that's just me. Okay. 2 things before we wrap up. I'm going to we did this with Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm going to do it here. Random spoiler questions without context. If your ex invites you to her wedding, are you fucking going?
No.
I was so confused. Like, wait a minute. This is the ex whose broken watch that means so much to you. You still carry around and you're going? And the next question is Earth 616, I guess New York, is that basically Florida, where like there's so much disaster happening all at once, but you just kind of, there's a big eye monster attacking the superheroes and this innocent girl. Let me just look out the window during my wedding. Like the universe that these normal everyday people exist in is kind of hilarious when you really think about it.
That is something that they very clearly do in the comics, where everyone's just like, fuck it. This is how the world is. There's like a whole comic called Damage Control about the people who have to go like pick up shit after the superheroes break everything. I think they did the DC version. They did a TV show of it, if I recall, with Danny Pudi and your girl Vanessa Hudgens is in it. But
piqued my interest.
It's there's a real like worldview sense thing that doesn't make that they're just not interested in engaging. They're not interested in engaging in the like religion of it all. The fact that gods are real and come to Earth every so often. The fact that time travel exists. There's that all this stuff is there. They just don't know how to handle.
I guess just my point is like the way that we're going to learn about like the insurrection in history books, I guess, depending what history books in the country, depending on where you are in the country. Like, is that how Earth 616 learns about the blip? And like, are you going to have to take a pop quiz on which superheroes were disappeared in the blip like back in 2019? It
feels like people want to engage on this in the stories, but just don't have the time or energy for it. You see it in No Way Home with the teachers, where one's like, fuck you killed Mysterio.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you killed Mysterio. That's right. Yeah.
And then you get Thanos was right in Hawkeye at the urinal. Like, there's a lot of little teases of what could be happening in the background. I, for one, would think it would be interesting if they just did like a sitcom set in New York, or like a romantic comedy on Disney Plus of just two normal people set in New York. They did this once, actually. Now that I think about it, I think it was called Item 47. And what is her name? Oh God, it's gonna kill me. Fuck. Lizzie Kaplan. Lizzie Kaplan. Isn't it?
Got there.
And they find like one of the guns from one of the Chitauri guns from Avengers, and like fuck around with it. And S.H.I.E.L.D. has to hunt them down and like take the gun back from them. It's like the only time we get the sort of normal people, boots on the ground notion of what's happening. And I actually legitimately think that would be kind of interesting. I think there are ways to do that could be pretty compelling. I just don't think it's ever going to happen, because the more questions you ask about it, the worse it gets.
Attention, everyone at said airport. All flights have been grounded because all superheroes are having a gigantic fight.
They put in a throwaway that it's closed.
Yeah. Oh, true. That's right. Yeah. Sorry, kids. The field trip is canceled to New York City today because a giant dimensional monster is attacking Doctor Strange. Are you aware of or I guess Sam Raimi, who created a baseball movie I like. Are you aware of why the 2003 Tigers are brought up in this movie?
I have no idea.
Do you remember the line in which the 2003 Tigers are brought up in this movie?
No. I mean, I assume it has something to do with For Love of the Game and the perfect game and all that, but I have no recollection of that line.
So the line is when when our Scarlet Witch, our Wanda, first dream walks into that version, 838's Wanda, and the kids are fighting, or they're fooling over, they're arguing. And one of the twins goes, you know who I think is the greatest? The 2003 Tigers. Now, a literal inside baseball for all of you. The two worst baseball teams ever by wins and losses are the 1962 Mets, who only won 40 games, and the 2003 Tigers, who won 43. Little known fact about Sam Raimi, the 62-year-old director from Detroit. He is a gigantic Detroit Tigers fan, which is why, add more context, why he's throwing a perfect game in For the Love of the Game at Yankee Stadium for the Tigers. He also apparently, in his free time, now he doesn't do many movies, watches the Detroit Tigers. And in this other dimension, the 2003 Tigers might be the greatest team of all time. I appreciate that, Sam Raimi. I also would create a movie where the Mets have just won all these World Series. The Knicks did get Steph Curry and a normal version of Katie and Kyrie in 2019. Next one is Steve Jobs a mutant, or was Steve Jobs a mutant?
Sure.
Man, the costume choices on Professor X when he's walking to go through that through Wanda's subconscious to find her.
Is it even him? I'm not kidding. Is it even his body?
In, like, was that his body and they superimposed it onto somebody else? I think they
superimposed his head onto someone else doing that.
Another version of Steve Jobs, maybe. 838 Steve Jobs. That's really all I got as far as this section. The last question, I guess we kind of answered where all of this is going, but like the overall rankings of it all, I'm not going to ask you to rank 28 movies right now. I'm just going to give you an over-under.
I'm ready. I have a list. I'm locked and loaded. But
so what number does this fall for you?
Counting the Disney Plus shows.
So that would be 34 then, right?
34. It ranks 20th for me.
20th. That's not okay. That's around where I would probably have it too. Top 18 is where I'd consider it. This isn't like Thor: The Dark World bad, you know?
No.
Yeah, I can understand. Again, I empathize with people whose expectations weren't met, and then like people offended by the portrayal of Wanda. If this is like what they did to your girl, like, okay, like, yeah, I stand by your right to react a certain way. It's fine. This is like Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Didn't need to change everything. Had the potential because of the cosmic capabilities of the characters, but no, this is fine. This isn't game changing, but I don't think all these movies necessarily need to be, when recognizing, expectations don't always need to be met,
Perfect poll, because it's right next to Guardians 2 in my ranking.
There you go. How far down is Black Widow?
Black Widow is 27th.
Oh, wow. Is it the lowest movie?
No. It's ahead of Ultron, Iron Man 2, Thor, Incredible Hulk, and Thor 2.
Okay. Now rank the 5 movies that have come out in phase 4.
Shang-Chi 1.
Knew this was coming, yeah.
Quite easily. No Way Home 2, Multiverse of Madness 3, Eternals 4, Black Widow 5.
Swap Shang-Chi and Spider-Man, and we have the same 5. I think the only other question.
What's your Disney Plus TV show ranking?
Wanda 1, Loki 2, Hawkeye 3, Moon Knight 4, What If 5, and like almost off the board, Cap Winter Soldier or Falcon Winter Soldier. I go Hawkeye, Wanda, Moon Knight, Loki, but those are 12th, 14th, 15th, and 16th on my overall list. They're essentially the 4, same.
Yeah. They're coin flip them for me. They're all about the same quality. I like them. Huge gap. What If? Huge gap. Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is terrible. Yeah,
the Moon Knight of it all. Oscar Isaac's an incredible actor. Like, that was my bigger takeaway. That episode 5 is up there for like so best of the shows that we've seen. Best single episodes. I agree. I do feel some of the does this matter, or what are the stakes here when you add like the giant Godzilla like monsters in the final episode? And for a show called Moon Knight, how very little Moon Knight we saw, but I also expect that we'll get more because we always get more with this. There's that word again, expectations. Last question, Oz. Would this change anything about your final review rankings so far?
Nope. I went back and checked too. It wouldn't make my Raimi list. And yeah, it'd be like 7th for me for Raimi.
That's probably where I'd have it too. Don't think there's another one where it applies. Danny Elfman scores. While
it's fine.
The use of the Danny Elfman scores with the musical note fight is amazing.
It's awesome. Actually, yeah, we should take a minute on that. That is fucking cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the best action scenes these things have ever done. That scene rocks.
And it's creative to the point where it's not just punchy or like two people standing across from each other waving their hands, you know?
Here's my hot take. That's the second best action scene in the entire MCU.
Oh, so here's my hotter take. It's not an action scene because of it's the best implementation of visual effects in the MCU.
Sure.
That's where I'll go.
As opposed to all the practical stunts these movies are doing.
But like, again, with all of the visual effects that we get, that's an actual, like, it's coherent. The back and forth of the Beethoven Bach that's going on. I absolutely dug that. And then like the killer chasing the people scene down the hallway in the sewer. Listen, those are the things that get me. The fear of not even just the Wanda popping up out of nowhere inexplicably. It's the actual, like, the quiet of it all and the anticipation is what actually gets me. And it's effective filmmaking, if you ask me.
Do you think this one will age well?
Listen, we didn't talk about it, and it's a good thing you asked before we go. If Wanda lives, like if this isn't the end of her story, which I'm assuming it isn't.
There's already a report they're doing a solo Wanda movie.
Well, so then there you go. Like, so then what was all this? You know, is she just like, is it gonna matter if like we technically see her have this arc and then die? If then that death means nothing, then what does it matter? You know, which
they didn't show you a body. They showed a collapsing building and the most powerful person in the world and a collapsing building. They're clearly not dead. Okay.
So you have a building collapse on you, right? Mm-hmm. Are you going to die? But you're not the most powerful.
You're not the
Scarlet Witch.
Hex magic. So
then how is Captain Marvel in 838 dead? Which, if not, then what are we doing all this for? You know,
because we showed her get squished. We showed a body. That's the difference. You see a body. The body
is what is the.
Come
difference.
On, this is. Okay. It's a horror movie. It's horror 101. You don't see a body. Someone's not dead.
Fair enough. It's a horror movie. You're funny. I worry that it's gonna feel pointless going forward. That I'm gonna look back and be like, oh, that just continued the story. Similar to how I walked out of. To use the analogy, walked out of Guardians 2 being like, that was fun. Doesn't matter. You know?
Yeah, it falls right in the tier with me. Perfect for what you're saying with Iron Man 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Guardians 2 of stuff that just doesn't really matter. Enjoy my 2 hours. Next.
Which this far into the MCU is why I'm a little worried. Now look, the MCU has I said it during our top 10. They have my trust that like they'll figure it out. They will go down a road, especially now implementing all these new characters and storylines that they got from the Fox merger. That I trust them here, but yeah, I am worried that I just saw. So I will say this: last Saturday or Friday night when I saw the movie for the third time. Walking out, I was like, I don't think I ever want to watch this movie again. I think I got every single thing I got out of this. There's not gonna be any before Doctor Strange 3. Let me go back and refresh my memory. I think there'll be other like we haven't talked about this, but I did go back and rewatch Spider-Man No Way Home. And what's become a habit of mine when I'm up late editing and I hit export on a video and it's like 45 minutes wait time. Is I just watched the final 45 minutes of No Way Home. So that movie has actually aged really well for me personally.
I'm jealous.
I dig once the Tobies pop through the portal. It's like, this is why I watch the imagination of movies, like these moments are what I come to the MCU for. Yeah, coherent storytelling, maybe not necessarily, or coherent character development, maybe not necessarily. Having said that, I don't think outside of, especially if the Illuminati in this just are never coming back, then I don't think I'm ever going to revisit this, which is a bummer.
I mean, I think
not a bummer might be a strong word, but it's just like the reality of where this falls in the MCU.
I suspect when either Doctor Strange 3 or Wanda 2 or the School of Magic thing that they're going to end up doing with Jacob Batalon, that when all that stuff comes to fruition, eventually something will make you toss this back on.
By the way, so America Chavez is able to create portals. And
which is canonical. Yeah.
Right. I'm not even saying like whether she's able to or not. The fact that she can travel interdimensionally, right, from universe to universe. And by the end of the movie, because Doctor Strange says, because I believe in you, is able to control her powers suddenly. And then you see her in school learning how to use a sling ring. Even more so, why can Jacob Batalon, why can Ned do that just unprovoked? In No Way Home,
I won't dunk
without
on No
the
Way
school,
Home right now.
Without the Camartage summer camp.
I mean, it definitely has nothing to do with the fact that sometimes writing is not based on what makes sense, but based on what the plot requires. I think that this is you're a wizard, Harry, sort of thing, and he's just like gifted and talented at magic. It's clear there's like even in the MCU, leaving aside comic book stuff, there's like gradations of skill and who's good and who gets good quickly, and he may just be a natural.
I hope he's a mutant. That's my take. I hope that's the explanation. He's a mutant.
I mean, I'm not actually kidding. I'm certain that we're getting a Harry Potter-esque show of Jacob Batalon learning magic from Wong. So that's something that we should be excited about.
The other part is that apparently, I'm sure you could confirm this. This movie was supposed to come out
before Wanda and No Way Home. Yep.
Yeah. So it wasn't supposed to be Ned that uses the sling ring. It was supposed to be America Chavez in No Way Home. And then COVID moved everybody's schedule around. But Sony was like, well, our movie's fine. Yeah, we'll release it regularly. And Marvel worked around them, knowing the stakes of what might happen.
The one last thing I'll say, I'm very excited for Marvel to get past COVID, because it's clear that COVID has really fucked up the visuals on these movies. And I don't want to litigate it too much, but I think No Way Home looks like shit. I think the visuals look like shit. I watched Doctor Strange 2 days before I watched Multiverse of Madness, and I was blown away by how much better the first Doctor Strange looks.
Oh, first one. Yeah.
Worlds better. Even basic things like the way the floors move in hallways when the stuff is the stuff is happening around them. Like when he has the first fight with Mads Mikkelsen in the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. That looks infinitely better than when they do the exact same effect with Elizabeth Olsen here. And it's not that Sam Raimi is an incompetent director or anything like that. I actually think like the visual effects houses are just not doing their jobs as well in COVID. And maybe it's just harder to film, and maybe they're just not doing anything on location. And it makes it harder from like a reference perspective for them to make the special effects look good. But I even think it's not fair to judge a movie by the trailer, but Ragnarok looks great, and Love and Thunder looks like a dog. Also, Black Panther is going to be a borderline disaster considering all the shooting issues. I just want them to get away from fucking COVID and make movies normally again so they can start to look better.
I agree. And I think you echo this sentiment. Can't wait for all of us to get past COVID.
So, yeah,
in many ways, shapes,
in like 2047, when we've all gotten immunity,
once America decides to help us, Freudian slip. Once America Chavez decides to help us go to a different universe where COVID never existed, hopefully.